So a very good morning to everyone. And the topic for today's webinar are the certain guidelines on data breach notification. So these guidelines have been doing their rounds over the past few weeks, over the past few months, and it had many organizations confused on what to do and how to make sure these guidelines are properly incorporated in their organizations as well. So we would be talking about the guidelines, the certain aspects of it, and what you can do as an organization to implement these guidelines and be compliant with them as well. Right, the speakers for today, we have Manoj, as you can see on the screen as well, who's a senior director and head of information security for Shiprocket. And then you also have me. I've been here for around a while. I take most of these webinars related to security and some of them for data privacy as well. So I'll just hand it over to you, Manoj, if you could give us a quick introduction about yourself. And of course, we usually ask this question to our speakers as well. What made you choose cybersecurity?
Sure, Krishna. Thank you so much for having me here. It's really my pleasure to talk to you and kind of share my thoughts. I'll also be keen to look forward to answer questions of my fellow cybersecurity practitioner around India and maybe globe, because this topic is really important, not just for me, you, one organization or another, but this is an initiative which will definitely take cybersecurity for the India as a country whole to a next level of maturity. So that's my whole intent to be on this call. Now, to answer your question, why cybersecurity? Very interesting one. So about me, I think I have over a decade of experience all into cybersecurity. So I think I started my career in cybersec, and in 2010, when I was deciding that what should I do in terms of my master's, was shall I go for my specialization in any of the IT or electronics stream? And that's when I came across in the college brochure cybersecurity. I mean, MTech in information security, and that's where I think somehow my instinct, you can say, kicked me saying, "This sounds interesting. Let's see what this all about." And that's when I did a basic research. Well, in 2010, at least in India, cybersecurity was not really well spoken or well accepted term, and there were many colleagues or seniors of mine. They were saying, "This is too narrow down stream for doing a specialization in masters. I think you should pick up a more generic one, which will help you to get a, I would say, broader job or maybe further career prospects." But then somehow I personally like the topics. I really like the idea of cybersecurity. And since then, I think I have never looked back. I have never regretted on my decision of choosing cybersecurity as a career. And now, especially when the more digitization is kicking in, we are living in more digital era, be it payments, be it documentation, anything and everything. I think cybersecurity is playing a very, very vital role. And not just that, since 2010, I think I have mentored many of my college juniors or maybe colleague friends who has reached out to me. I'm sorry, I have a bad throat, so please bear with me. So I have mentored many of my, I would say, friends, colleagues, juniors who have reached out to me on LinkedIn or personal forum. I have really shared my thoughts, my journey, and I've told everyone one very important thing, that every journey is different. So please don't look up, say, Krishna's journey or my journey saying, okay, if I get into cybersecurity, I have a road well laid for me. No, my friends, this is a very interesting journey. Yes, but then you need to do your own homework and you need to do your own research, because in cybersecurity also there are various streams. I'm sorry, I'm deviating from the main topic, but let me take 10 seconds because you
No, of course.
Career. So I think in cybersecurity, when at least I was in college, I was not knowing that cybersecurity also has various pillars, saying cloud security, application security, risk and compliance, and so on and so forth. So it is very important for all of us who are in the early phase of career or who are just kind of exploring career into cybersecurity. Please do a bit of due diligence, understand all the verticals, understand where your interest lies, because I have seen myself, when I was put into one particular stream, I was not at all liking that job, and I really quit my job in less than a year. So that's what happens when you even you are in the same stream, but you're not in the same specialization. You may not find it very, very interesting for yourself. So do your research, find what you like, and definitely now there are various forums, mentors, great folks like Krishna who are doing great initiatives around, say, creating workshops, seminars, and all to guide people. Reach out to anyone and everyone, and we all will be happy to kind of guide all of you as and when required. So yeah, that's my thought, Krishna. Sorry, I went
Perfect.
a little overboard,
No,
but
thank you, Manoj. I think that was pretty important as well because a lot of the attendees come back to us on LinkedIn and ask us how to start their career because we have a diverse background of people. We have people from college, we have industry professionals as well. So I think it was really insightful for them to understand the different verticals and what they can do to do better in cybersecurity as well. So I think we can move on with the webinar, and I'll just majorly talk about a disclaimer that we wanted to put out that whatever statements that we have here in this particular webinar are definitely our own. It does not reflect our organization, and there is no legal agenda behind it as well. So please make sure that this is just for reference and just for educational purposes. Now, let's talk about the agenda for today's session. And the agenda primarily focuses on the CERT-In guidelines for the data breach notification. We'll also talk about the different aspects and how you can, as an organization, look onto those particular guidelines and what do they actually mean, right? Because the guidelines cover certain sections. It covers body corporates, it covers government entities, it also covers certain VPN servers and VPN providers as well. So what you can do is you can try and understand these guidelines. You can also understand the practicality of it. And for that, Manoj would be here to help us understand what they actually mean. So we'll move on to the introduction. And before that, do you think all types of entities come within the purview of certain guidelines, or is the scope restricted? Right. So I think Varsha has probably, or Rimisha has probably put the link in the chat section as well. So just go to menti.com. If you do not want to type in the code, just click on this link. It will take you there faster, right? And put in your responses. Whatever it is, it does not matter if you're right or wrong. We just want to understand your thought process so that we can take this webinar in that particular aspect as well. So perfect. So I think we have a pretty mixed expectation from the guidelines that came in. So I think, Manoj, it would be best if you could answer what this actually means and what kind of entities come under the ambit of CERT-In. Over to you, Manoj.
sure. Thanks, Krishna. So yeah, I mean, many folks were right. This is applicable to every single organization in India, be it small, large. The moment you are registered in India as an organization, you are under the purview of these guidelines. Before going deep into the types of organization and sector and so on and so forth, I would like to kind of share my personal thoughts about what is the intent, that at least how I read these guidelines or any certain guidelines from a cybersecurity perspective is. So before that, even one step back, what is CERT? So I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was really not very shocked when he told me that many folks in his organization asked him, "What is CERT? What is CERT-In?" So let's start actually from there. So CERT is not a new term, not just for India, but this is a body for various countries. It stands for Computer Emergency Response Team, and this body is usually a government body in most of the countries, and they are responsible to drive holistically at a nation level cybersecurity initiatives, cybersecurity threats, and all, because we must be knowing that among the various types of cybersecurity attacks, nation sponsored or politically motivated cyber attack is also one of the key cyber attacks. And that's why it is worthwhile to have an organization who will see not just, say, for example, for a company, for a sector, for a region, but for the entire country altogether. And that's where CERT-In, CERT-In, which stands for Indian Computer Emergency Response Team. And as the name suggests, this organization, which is under the, I would say, Department of IT and Electronics, MITI, and this particular organization is responsible for ensuring that at India as a whole in the country, how we are driving our maturity for cybersecurity. So that's where they keep on releasing guidelines, as I would say, mandates for various companies to follow to ensure that at a country we are taking significant mature steps in this rising era of cyber threats or cyber crime. So I think that's CERT and that's CERT-In. And that also partially answers that why this is applicable to all the companies, because see, no company is big or small, and I'm sure you who all are on this call must be knowing about cyber kill chain, the attack kill chain frame, right, where a small entity is usually being victimized and they are being used as a launch pad to further attack to the next level, right? For example, we have seen Lockheed Martin or ways of the cyber attack where one company who was a supplier, who was a vendor, was used as a victim, and that was further used to exploit to get into the main, the end target. So that is where, say, for example, let's say a small manpower company who provides vendors or contractors to say, let's say a company who deals with critical infrastructure, right? If this contractor system don't has antivirus or don't has the basic security enforced, and his or her say laptop is compromised, the moment that contractor goes inside that company and connects his or her PC to the network, the game is over, right? So it's not about how big or how small we are. It is about what role we play. And in cybersecurity, everyone is equally important. At least in my company, I make sure that everyone understands that cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. It is not my responsibility, nor your responsibility, not a tool-driven approach. It is a equal, I would say, contribution of people, process, and technology. Even if we have the best of people, if we don't have tech and process, we can't do anything, or vice versa. If I have implemented all best in class solution, I have the good people, but they don't know what to do when. They don't know how to do a triage. They don't know how to do a remediation. They don't know how to investigate into a EDR logs. They can't do anything. So that's where cybersecurity is equally important for all of us, top down. And that's where this CERT-In, or any for the matter, any CERT-In guidelines is equally important for all the organization, no matter how big, small, or complicated your organization is from a size, revenue, and sector perspective. Yes. What may vary is the implementation approach, the implementation timelines, the prioritization. As I said, for example, for a manpower company, the most important thing is to secure the laptop, which they carry and connect to the client company. Their website, probably getting the website compromised might be a P2 for them, because website is just where they talk about who they are, what they are, their careers, and so on and so forth, right? Wherein, say, for example, a company who provides services, let's say a bank, or let's say social media profile, for them, the website is their business. The website is their service. For them, the website is the priority one. So every company should do a business impact analysis, which is BIA, so that they can understand what is the significance of threat in their organization. And then accordingly, they can plan the implementation or the remediation roadmap for them. So I think, again, yeah, Krishna, to answer your question, CERT-In, I answered why it is important. I answered to who all it is relevant. I think that I answered that as well.
Right, Manoj. So, just like you mentioned, certain releases mandate certain releases, certain guidelines as well. One more thing that certain also releases are certain advisories around products that people use, or certain solutions, security solutions, IT solutions, where there have been vulnerabilities that are reported in the wild. So if you want to subscribe, you can simply go to CERT-In, you can fill in a form, and CERT-In will automatically send you emails around major vulnerabilities or even the medium ones for products that are being used across the world. So it is helpful to have a central repository and a central entity that is sending out these advisories instead of subscribing to multiple different updates. So this is also something you can do to make sure that you are aware about the different vulnerabilities that came out in the wild. And you're also updated about which products to focus on if you have a patch management program in your organization as well. Right. So just to add on to what Manoj said, apart from that, the introduction part, like we already discussed, the agenda for today's webinar is to talk about the recent CERT-In guidelines. So which focuses on how you can report certain data breaches, how you can make sure that there's a time frame which you need to report within. And obviously, it also talks about how certain VPN providers as well as certain other entities which come under the purview of this can do to make sure that they're compliant with the guidelines as well. Right. So we already spoke about what CERT-In is, how CERT-In is applicable to every entity across India. Then let's talk about industries that are under compliance. So Manoj, can you shed some light on what kind of activities service providers or body corporates have to do? Because body corporates, I think, are something which we should be concerned about because we all fall under that. So what do you think body corporates can do to absorb these guidelines? And what do you think are the right kind of people with whom the security officer or the security professional needs to communicate to make sure these guidelines are implemented in the organization?
Sure. So Krishna, as I was mentioning in the last slide, that the implementation or the prioritization of these guidelines may vary from one organization to another, depending on the service they provide and so on and so forth. So if you talk specifically about the CERT-In guidelines, which was released on 28th of April, it talks about 6 different guidelines at a high level. Out of these, 4 are generic, which is applicable for every single company, be it government body corporates, data centers, intermediaries, or service providers. There are 2 specific ones, wherein one is particular for any virtual private network provider, VPN or VPS, or cloud or data center providers. And the last one is specifically for about BFSI who provides any payment related services. And again, I can read between the lines why the intent of these two specific guidelines for these two sectors. I'll share my personal views on that as well. But before that, I'll quickly summarize those six guidelines, which was part of this guidelines from CERT-In. The first one, which talks about a centralized or a consistent time protocol. That means all the systems, all the, I mean, they call it critical, but in my view, it should be all. Because I mean, yes, we can do a prioritization of critical first, production, and then go to non-production lower environment. But yeah, in my view, NTP should be synced with all single system in the company. And the intent here is in the moment of any investigation, any breach investigation or cyber incident investigation, when the incident response team tries to create the entire step-by-step activities, that when they try to reconstruct the attack, they need to correlate lots of logs. So for example, they need to see from which endpoint the attacker has get into the system. From there, they have hopped onto say a switch, or let's say a server, or to a router, or to database, or did a port scanning, what activity they have done. They need to correlate logs from various systems. Now in that event, if the time is not synchronized, say for example, my system says 5 p.m. India, my neighbor system says 7 a.m. UST time, the incident response team cannot correlate saying that Manoj's system was first infected and then from there the second hop was my colleague's system, right? That's where the time synchronization comes into picture. Now, there are various ways for synchronizing time. There are various NTPs available. And the most important part is the integrity or the authenticity of these NTP servers, because at times I have seen in my own experience, the NTP server itself was compromised. It was poisoned to kind of, first of all, disrupt the time zone. And that's where they have asked to either integrate with the NTP of NIC, which is again a government body, or a NPL, or any other traceable NTP system. So I can very well see that they have given the flexibility. They are not very stubborn saying you have to only do A or B. They have given a good flexibility that you can pick up your choice of NTP provider, but it has to be accountable. It has to have all the basic bolts of security in place, so that even if you are NTP synced, you should not be kind of in a difficult situation when the time comes. So that's where the first requirement talks about integrating all the systems or enabling NTP sync in all the systems. That's again very, very important. Second one is where they talk about reporting. They have laid out close to about, I think, 20 types of cyber attacks. And they have asked about reporting those within 6 hours of identifying or detection of such attack. Again, there are debates, there are questions. 6 hours is too hard, too less. There has to be some sort of prioritization saying ABC type of attack should be reported in 3 hours because of criticality, and XYZ can be done, say, in 24 hours. All that I will not go into nitty-gritties. Again, as I said, implementation and prioritization may vary from company to company. But yeah, I completely agree with the fact that the attacks, I have personally read this guidelines many a times, and I have started my career, good years of my career gone into SOC. So I was able to relate that why these 20, what is the meaning of network scanning and probing, while many people talks about saying, this is a very generic thing. We keep on experiencing it day to day out, right? It is very difficult for us to identify and report such things. But think a step back. Think from a nation perspective. If let's say my company or any company A is experiencing from a country X a kind of probing, if another company B also experience the same from same IP, it may at a country become a pattern. While for me, it's just 3 scanning, just 5 scanning, very, very minuscule. I can just let go about it. It's not even bothering me. That's fine. But when you correlate the entire data and when you see from a lens of country, you may come across a pattern saying, oh, is it possible that the country X is trying to attack India? They are trying to attack all NCII PC of our country. They are trying to attack all BFSI or any particular segment or industry in our country. And that's where the beauty of these things, if we really do report such kind of things, and if this will be done in the real sense, I think we can come up with fantastic insights, and that can help us a lot of proactive, I would say, knowledge or insights to be ready for various cyber threats. So again, the second one talks about reporting any cyber incident among those 20 within the 6 hours. And they've also specified the channel and the medium that how we can report, along with the form, along with the template, that how we have to report that to CERT-In. The third one talks about is an individual person or a SPOC who will interact and who will deal with CERT whenever there is a need of any investigation, any response, or any such coordination with CERT, and that's again very, very important. Like Krishna was mentioning, we can proactively go and subscribe to CERT-In to receive such advisories. But at the same time, say something when, as I was saying, process is very important. We should know how to do when and what to do when, right? So it is very important for even CERT to know that who is the person. Like, for example, any company, there are CTOs, there are CEOs, there are CXOs, there are CISOs, right? Now, every individual has their own function. Every individual has their own role in the company. If, say, for example, CERT-In sends a security-related advisory to a CTO, or say a CEO of a company, the CEO will take their own time to look into that. Then they will forward to say CTO, then CTO will send it to CISO. So in the entire scheme of thing, when the information was being passed on from one individual to another, we lost time. And in cyber incidents, my friends, time is the most important thing. The sooner you are able to detect it, the sooner you are able to contain it, the sooner you are able to triage it and remediate and respond to it. That's how you actually get ahead of the attackers. Otherwise, by the time you get to know, okay, you have breached, the attacker has already done the data exfiltration, their purpose is solved, they will be gone out of your system. All you can do is like a autopsy, like a forensic of a dead person. You can only say, oh, this went wrong, but beyond that, you can't do anything. And now in cybersecurity, if not proactive, at least near real time is what plays the most important thing. And that's where it is very, very important to have a designated person who is responsible to drive or to own cybersecurity initiatives, so that the information can first hand fly to the person, and that individual can take the right course of action which is required in that particular hour. And vice versa, the same person can point to CERT saying, I am experiencing this attack, this is the data, this is the log, please do the needful, right? So that's again very, very important.
Right, Manoj.
Next.
So, just wanted to add on to that, right? For example, you also mentioned that the government has also instructed certain VPN providers to share logs as and when requested. So, us being a data privacy firm, it kind of goes against the very right to privacy that we kind of push, right? And since the government has also taken back the data protection bill as of now, so what we see is that if the government is taking out all these VPN logs from the VPN providers, and we've also heard about news about VPN providers actually backing out of India now because of this certain guideline that has been pushed out. So what is your view on this? And I just want you to shed some light on how it can also impact maybe data privacy a little, because of course now the government knows exactly everything, right? For example, even the kind of internet activity we are trying to hide, not exactly from the government, but then again, it's an intrusion of the privacy that we are trying to achieve.
Sure. I think I agree to a certain degree with what you are trying to kind of say here. And I also believe in privacy to a certain extent, And in my view, I think privacy and security should go hand in hand. There should always be a right balance. Overdo of anything is not really good. In my view, I think what it means, again, how I am reading in my own mind is, it is not more about knowing that what Manoj is browsing, what website Manoj is trying to see, but it is more at, say, for example, someone in a location, say in Hyderabad, using a computer Mac, browser Safari, is trying to access youtube.com, for example. This will give a lot of insight. It is not about knowing an individual that what Manoj is doing, at least in my view, right? If someone is targeting me, saying, I want to see what this guy is doing, then it's a threat to privacy. But as long as the intent of this entire control is to understand the nature, behavior, and the internet transaction, and the categorization to derive some sort of inferences out of it, saying, for example, if we observe a pattern, say a website like, again, I mean, just for my personal reference, say songs.pk or any other unauthorized multimedia site, right? For example, if we are seeing a trend that 50 people who browse that website ended in having a virus into their system, then probably we can infer, say, that this website seems to be a courier who basically drops a payload onto the system, right? And we can generate a advisory saying non-authorized sources of multimedia sites such as ABC are not good, and basis these facts we can go ahead and block it, right? If that is the intent, that is well enough. But if the intent is what Manoj is browsing, what Krishna is browsing, oh, Krishna is seeing his net banking site, I think that is bad, right? So there's absolutely need to have a right balance. When you are inferring data, when you're making trends, when you're making patterns, when you're identifying threats, I think that should be okay. The moment it comes to individuality, the moment it comes to tagging or tracking a particular person, I think that's when privacy is there. And I'm sure you guys will make enough hue and cry. And I'm very, very hopeful to see a newer version of the same bill being tabled again, because that's the need of an hour.
Sure, Manoj. I think you're spot on. I think it makes sense on what the government intends to do with the data that they are collecting. So just on top of that, we have a few questions that are also being asked from our attendees here. And Amit has a question which says that VPN use in a company should also be logged, or is it just for VPN providers?
Sure. I mean, thanks. Very, very good question. I think I'm sure for an organization, there is no second thought. They should log all of these. I mean, at least the moment someone is connecting and someone is disconnecting, not just from a that perspective, but also identifying threats like brute force attack. Say, for example, if my password was compromised and attacker is trying to kind of exploit my system and get into my VPN so that they can access to my servers, right? Because VPN is always used to access any sensitive system in the company. So VPN access logs definitely needs to be logged. Again, I'm saying once you establish the connection, what transactions you do, not really that important. But till you're authenticating yourself onto the VPN, your behavior, your pattern. Say, for example, last night you logged in from an IP in India into your VPN system, and then today morning your credentials is being used from an IP in Singapore. Very, very difficult, because until unless there's a need, you will not travel from Delhi to Singapore overnight. Forget about that. Say in the difference of 15 minutes. Again, that's a very layman experience use case. Now we all know about that, which is called impossible geo travel. Say, for example, 15 minutes before my credentials was used from Vegas, and now in 15 minutes later I am in Bangalore. Not possible, right? So that's why attackers are now very smart. They do those geo plotting, they calculate the minimum time to travel, and then they do those script based attack. But still, as a business, as an organization, I know that my people don't travel to, say, a particular country. But if I am seeing on my VPN that there are hits coming from that particular country, I am double sure this is not a legitimate traffic. That's where VPN access should be monitored, at least from a authentication and authorization perspective. And patterns such as multiple login failure, say, for example, login failure on particular time frame, say 3 p.m. every day. If I am seeing Manoj, 2 login failure from Manoj, that might be a scripted attack. And all of these I have experiences personally in my journey at SOC.
Perfect, Manoj. So I think we have a couple of follow-up questions based on the answers that you've given. I think people are more curious about, especially Tor network. There's a question on Tor, right? For example, how government or company can track or block the Tor network?
There are various ways to do it. For example, again, I don't want to vouch for any OEM here. I'll talk at a technology level. So there are various tools and technologies available. One of the most effective one is EDR. Second way to do the same thing is having a device management, which allows or which gives you a real-time view of what's installed onto your system. The most basic way to do is disable admin control to admin access to all the users, and let IT team install any software. And I'm sure Tor will be not installed by default. So anyone who tries to install it will not be able to install, because he or she don't has the admin or the required privilege to install the software. They need to create a ticket. The ticket has to go to approval for various people. And I'm sure they will be educated enough to say Tor is not a good thing. We should not allow it. Also, we should have a software asset repository or inventory, which should give us a visibility that which all softwares are authorized or listed to be used in the company. So there are various ways to implement that. There are tools to further monitor it. As I said, EDR. There are tools to further do a governance, as I said, device management. But there are various level of controls depending on the maturity of the company. They can choose and they can implement that. But yeah, Tor is a very, very dangerous thing. Should not be allowed in any organization.
Right. So is there any kind of log retention timeline that has been shared by CERT-In? For example, you need to store logs for say 5 years, or maybe some kind of timeline that's also being prescribed by CERT-In?
Yes. So in general, for everyone, it is 180 days, and for your data centers, your VPN and cloud service providers, for them, it is 5 years or longer. So these are the two categories for which they have to store these logs.
Perfect. So I see there are a lot of questions as of now, but we'll take those up as we move ahead in the webinar as well. I hope some of the statements and some of the topics we cover answer your questions. If they are still unanswered, we will definitely catch up at the very end of the session. So we'll just move forward for now. And We already spoke about the different industries that are under compliance and what are the certain activities that are shared between them, and the couple of them which are just restricted to, say, VPN providers. Now let's look at the type of incidents that are dealt by CERT-In. I think Manoj has already talked about the 20 type of incidents. We have covered a few here. It is not extensive in nature. But Manoj, is there any specific type of incident that you want to focus upon here?
Absolutely. I think before going into specifics, I would like to talk about that. I mean, again, when I was reading these 20 attacks, I was able to relate that why these 20, at least. Why not say less than these 20? Because if you see attack types, in general, attacker may either impact your services. Say, if I'm a service provider, if I'm a multimedia service provider, my website, if that goes down, that's an impact of revenue to me, right? That is one. If you recollect your basics of InfoSec, the CIA trait, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, these 20 cuts across C, I, and A very well. And I think these are at least the basic minimum. I don't read these as a comprehensive. I always read as but not limited to. There are furthermore various types of attacks, but these are the basics which all of us as applicable, like for example, SCADA IoT might not be applicable to all of us, but as applicable, I think these are very, very important for everyone. And in fact, I would like to kind of talk about a little bit in detail about these attacks as well, that why these are important. I've already touched upon the scanning or the probing, that why this is important, because when we have a holistic data, we can infer saying, is this a targeted attack to a particular segment, sector, country, or from a country, so on and so forth. Then the second one talks about largely compromise of critical systems. It can be your server, can be your database, can be your SCADA system, can be your IoT. It can also be, say, compromising your services. As I said, like for example, a net banking application is down. Your website, which provides multimedia services, is down. So that is A, impacting the users to take benefit of that. That is one. B, those can be further used. I mean, let's say, for example, the server was compromised. I have seen many such attacks where the attacker has not done anything else while they have just compromised the server and they are just waiting there. They're just understanding about your environment. They are gathering all the information and they are doing, say, a slow upload of all vital information to a CNC. That is just a part of reading or reconnaissance of about your system. That what is most critical thing for you, rather than just compromising and exploiting. So attackers are now very smart. They are very, very patient. I must tell you that. I mean, I was reading about attack that the attacker compromised the system approximately 10 years back, and they were just waiting there. They didn't trigger anything, So attackers are as slow, as deadly as that, right? So compromise is very, very important. Now, access threat, be it unauthorized access, be it your password compromise and all, is very, very important. I mean, you read about anything, Gartner, you read about any other SANS, anything. Credential theft is very, very important because it is very easy to do. Like, for example, sending a phishing email. If I'll send a phishing email to thousands of people, I'm sure, stats talk about at least 1% people will fall prey to it, And as a human being, and see, it's not their fault. As a human being, we can't remember various passwords. And what happens at a point in time, we tend to use the same password for almost every website. Like, for example, the same password for my corporate, same password for my Facebook, YouTube, Gmail, and everything. And in the same place, attacker sends a phishing email saying, register to this site and you will get 5,000 rupees ka voucher, And as a human being, we tend to use the same password. I type my login and password, attacker sniffs that password, use the same password into your corporate domain or your critical system, and they get the access. It's not their fault, right? So unauthorized access or credential theft is very, very important. Malicious code, or say talk about virus, worm, Trojan, or ransomware. These are again a reality. Days are gone when I was in college days. Virus was a kind of thing we used to get afraid. Oh my God, in his or her system there is virus. I won't let him or her connect to my hard disk. My hard disk may crash. But now virus is very common. I mean, I know more than 10 sites. You just simply go and browse that site. Your system, you will end up compromising your system because that these sites are meant to drop payload into your system, right? These sites are meant to drop virus malware into system, and that's fine. They are designed to do that work. So virus is a reality, and that's where you see even the adoption of antivirus or say advanced tool for corporate like EDR and all is very, very reality. So that's where monitoring or keeping an eye on malicious codes or virus, because most of the attack starts from that only. There is a payload in your system, it will do the needful, and then it will just drop, say, another worm and just die there. So most of the attacks, this is the starting point. Similarly, denial of service, talked about it. Very, very important, not just from a revenue perspective, reputation, and lots of stuff as well. Attacks on e-governance, e-commerce, again, supply chain attack. For example, if I need something, if the service provider is down, it is going to impact mass as a country. So various things on that. Attack on IoT, not need to be explained. Data breach and data leak. Again, very, very important thing. We keep on reading on news that this company is hacked, this company is breached. But one thing I want to request here in this forum is, guys, don't get kind of afraid by hearing the word data breach or data leak. This is a reality. We all live in a system where we tend to overshare our information. Please take a minute to read about it in detail, understand what is being leaked, understand what is the source of leak, right? Do not just be another WhatsApp university saying, hey, you know what, I read this company is breached, and just make fun of it. No, it's not like that. Read about it, learn from it, try to see and try to make sure that your organization is not doing the same mistake. Make sure that the identified vulnerability is fixed, and read any news, any media as an information of kind of source of learning, rather than just get afraid of, oh, particularly that particular company is breached, or say, forward that to your friend who is working in that company. Hey, you know what, your company is down with data breach. So yeah, and in this entire thing, I'm also trying to do something which is called spreading the awareness that cyber is reality, cyber threat is reality, getting hacked is reality, getting breached is reality. And this is the moment where we all should stand together and fight with this as a nation. And that's what the CERT-In guidelines is trying to do, making this entire country ready to deal with cyber breaches. Next one is about malicious mobile application, need not to talk. This is the similar thing, which is as similar as your website now into your handphones. Next one is fake mobile application. Very, very important. And that's where most of us have now seen, by the means of movies or internet research, the dark web based monitoring or Play Store based monitoring, because that's another very easy trip for any of the attacker to do. Create a lookalike app, host it on the app store, and then let people download and get victimized of it. I was reading a few months back, there was a online payment company's app. I don't want to name it again. That lookalike app was there, and the use case was very simple. It will mimic the entire payment. It will show all the interfaces saying payment has been done to so and so person, but in reality, at the back end, no payment was done, and many poor shopkeepers were kind of tricked by that app, right? So that's very, very important to keep an eye of which all applications are on the website. Like in previous days, we used to do a website based reconnaissance, that are there any lookalike websites. Similarly, mobile apps are the next thing, and so forth. So these are largely the 20 types of attacks. I went into specifics a little bit more, but yeah, these are the 20 types of attacks. These are the basic minimum which needs to be monitored and to be reported. And I see that all of these can convert to a trend pattern, can give insights to, say, sector, country, geographical region, and so forth, and can help us to be more proactive, more ready. I remember a similar concept of NCIIPC being discussed, I think, in the year of 2014-15, where the entire these critical infrastructure came together saying we will share our intel to make sure that we are sharing our cybersecurity threats, advisories, and readiness to be more proactive and more ready against attackers. I think this is the similar kind of initiative for the nation whole, rather than just a particular sector, segment, and type of people or the type of company.
Right, Manoj. So I think we'll just take up a few questions from the chat section as well. Parth has a question which is around zero trust security, right? So this is a topic that is kind of a buzzword in the cybersecurity industry these days, and he wants to understand how about introducing zero trust security in place of VPN. How would it be beneficial, and how it would be compliant with certain guidelines?
Sure, I think very good question, Parth. But before that, I want to highlight one thing, that zero trust is not a plug and play thing. Zero trust is not a, say, tool or technology that I will implement like firewall or EDR or DLP, and I'll say, okay, now I am zero trust and now I am secure, right? So first of all, zero trust is a concept. It is a concept, consists of 5 or 6 pillars of security, which talks about identity access management, your remote access control perspective, your data protection, and so forth. I don't remember all the 6 pillars to be very precise right now. But yeah, all I remember is this is a combination of various tools and technologies. Few people call it SASE, few people call it zero trust, so forth. There are various names in the market. but the end objective is same. If you talk about pillars, if you see from an implementation approach perspective, you may not have a VPN solution, VPN solution, but there will be a solution in place which will limit, which will validate all the IPs, all the IDs before letting you connect to any of the system. In fact, zero trust adds, I would say, more level of granularity. So for example, right now, what we do in VPN, we validate the IP, we validate the ID, we also validate at times the MAC address of the system, saying is the traffic coming from a certified or registered device or not, and we let that connection establish. Once established, we let them access everything, right? In zero trust, it is further segmented. It is specific to buckets. If you talk about cloud infrastructure, it is specific to buckets. If you talk about network, it is specific to ports and protocols. It is further granular. So if you ask me if you can implement or replace your VPN with a zero trust principle, it is further better. And that's the reason zero trust is being now talked and implemented by various companies. And it adds further layer of security. But to answer that question at one level, any security is incomplete. No security is 100% secure if we have the right people, technology, and process. Like, for example, I have VPN, or let's say I have zero trust implemented. I have a habit of showing the swag. I'll go to my boss saying, give me approval. I want to access from XYZ system. I have a business reason, and if I'll end up with having n number of exceptions, basically those are the holes, those are the punches in the security system. So if we follow any system which is implemented with the right sense, right authenticity, I think we are secure. But yeah, to answer your question, zero trust is the next step. But yeah, it is not one single solution. It is a group of solutions coming together to give a concept of don't trust any communication, validate, authenticate, provide point in time access, not once established forever kind of thing.
Right. So I think, Parth, I hope that answers your question as well, right? Yeah. So I think that answers the question. So Manoj, we'll just move on to the next slide and we'll talk about, I think we already spoke about synchronization with the NTP server, but I was looking that people were probably responding to this, right? Let's look at the time frame within which you have to report an incident to CERT-In. Right. So I think we spoke about it, right? And I think some people might have caught it or maybe missed it as well. Right. So I think a lot of people here understand, right, what are the reporting times for which you have to report to CERT-In. For example, you have suffered a data breach or you have suspected a data breach within your organization and you want some kind of guidance from CERT-In on what to do next, right? Especially if you don't have a dedicated security team or an IT team and you are unaware of what to do, but you know that a data breach is something that is lurking in your infrastructure. Right. So you can certainly reach out to CERT-In for certain counseling as well, which is something that we do in the data privacy realm as well. Most countries which have a data privacy law, there's a supervisory authority to which you can reach out to in case you need some counseling and guidance. Right. So CERT-In will definitely provide you guidance and counseling in case of any kind of security questions that you might have. Right. For that case, I'm not sure about the time frame to which they have to respond to you because it's specified in data privacy laws for data supervisory authorities. But then again, you can certainly reach out to CERT-In, write or drop an email that this has happened with you, and they'll definitely reach out to you again. Right. So, Manoj, I think people have understood from our session that 6 hours is the ideal time. People who have chosen 4 hours, it's practically very difficult to do that. Right. I wouldn't say impossible, but then again, 6 hours is something that is still better than having a 4 hours time frame. Right. So, Manoj, we have already covered this in the previous session as well. Right. So, Amit has a question where Amit wants to know if we can talk about the controls linked to each of the 20 incidents that CERT-In has highlighted. So, Amit, I don't think we can cover all of them, right? Because I don't think that is the scope of this discussion as well. But Manoj, if you would just like to touch upon a few of the generic controls that a small or a medium organization can do, because a larger organization will definitely have a dedicated team. But then again, for a small or medium organization, what can they do to at least take care of certain controls?
Sure. I think Amit Krishna accurately said that a single shoe cannot fit all, right? So we cannot have one single approach for cybersecurity as well. And again, specifically when it comes to various, I would say, maturity of company, size of company, scale, and so on and so forth. But yes, I can, at a high level, I can talk about a few things. At a, I would say, pillar level, for example, we should definitely have a strong security controls at endpoint level. Again, I'll not go about saying we should have EDR versus antivirus and so on and so forth. But I am talking about at a vertical level, we should definitely have a very strong and robust mechanism for our endpoints, because especially in this remote or in this work from home kind of scenario, our endpoint is now directly exposed to internet. Unlike earlier days when we used to have a corporate network, we used to first go to our ODC. Our system used to first connect it to the intranet, which is a corporate control network, which has various security controls. Then from there, we have a perimeter device, firewall, which basically looks into traffic. So in earlier days, like till 2020, we were having a set of defense in depth concept by default, which we were not even knowing, but at a company level, it is already enforced, implemented, and being monitored and managed. But now, our endpoints are directly exposed to internet. On the other hand, the perimeter devices, for example, firewall earlier was knowing that okay, this is a server which is hosted only to internal devices, which will have traffic coming from only internal IPs. It is very easy for anyone to look into the traffic and say this is an internet based IP, why this is trying to connect to our system, block it straight away. Now every single traffic is an internet traffic. Now, in this entire set of traffic, how to identify which IP is legitimate, which IP is malicious, because all of these traffic is coming via same ISP, right? So endpoint needs to be protected, because if endpoint is protected, I think majority of us is done. We know that if rest all is done, I think I am sure that the connection is originating or establishing from a secure device, which is managed device. So endpoint security is the key. Endpoint security is again not about just install something and forget. You need to keep an eye. You need to see the how the device is doing, because second thing is patching becomes very difficult in this world of remote working. Earlier days, we know that okay, even if I'm not there, I just lock my system, went for my lunch. In that time, network is idle. My IT team will push patches during say 1 to 2 in the afternoon. They know that okay, system is up, user is not there. Push it, do it. Now what happened is internet is everyone's own device now. For example, I am connecting to a 1 gig line, my friend is connected to a 400 meg line in his or her home, right? We cannot expect that everyone's internet will be stable at that point in time. So it is not possible now that I run a patch at one particular time, say non-business hour, 9 p.m. I release the patch, everyone will get patched. The answer is no. That's where I'm saying installing control is not all about it. You need to also keep an eye, monitor the compliance of your devices, right? That is the second piece. Once your endpoint is covered, then you have to come at the second stage, which is your remote connection management. It can be via VPN, zero trust, whatever not, because as I said, thousands of IPs are trying to connect. Identify that which IP is sending the credential of the individual really, or which is an attacker who has masqueraded or has stolen the credential and is trying to log in on behalf of that individual. How will you differentiate that Manoj has not stolen Krishna's password and is trying to enter Krishna's password on his or her behalf, right? I mean, for Krishna, it's he's not her, sorry. So yeah, so how to identify that? So that's where remote access management is the key. And we also need to keep an eye to understand and to monitor that how that is behaving. Is there any anomaly? Is there something which is suspicious? So and so forth. So remote access is the second thing. Third thing comes to the asset management or the device management of our critical systems, including your patching, hardening, so and so forth, because ancient times, our systems were exposed to intranet. Now it is exposed to internet. Now, for example, everything is now exposed to internet. I have to find out which is the legitimate one, which is not the legitimate one. And now in this workathon culture, I can go and work from Spain. My IT team cannot say that, okay, a traffic which is coming from Spain, we can block it. No, you never know. Your friend has traveled to a particular country, particular place of the world, and they're logging in from there. So it is very, very important to allow or to expose your system, because otherwise you will impacting your business. And you have to basically, in the runtime, you cannot even take say 2 minutes to identify or validate the traffic. That will be too much of latency. So everything has to be on the runtime. So the server level patching and hardening and everything becomes the key. And on top of everything, a continuous monitoring, because you're sharing things on the internet, your data is on the internet, everything is over internet. You need to keep an eye on what's happening, A, from a network perspective, B, from a threat perspective, and C, from a data movement perspective. What is being shared with which individual? Say, for example, now everything is uploaded into my Google Drive or OneDrive or Cloud Drive, right? I was trying to give access to say Krishna, who is my client, but I mistakenly typed his email ID and that went to someone else. Now that individual can log into my drive and can have all the access because I myself has given them the access, right? So continuous monitoring is the key. So I think in my view, these 4 pillars are the basic and the most important thing: your endpoint, your access management, your patch hardening, and your server management, and a continuous monitoring of your all the assets, all your resources. I think these are the basic minimum, and I think that will cover most of your things as well, except I think fake mobile apps and all that stuff.
Right, Manoj. I think that was really, really helpful because I think we have a lot of people who are also joining in from smaller companies, right? No dedicated security or IT team, but they're still trying to make sure they can do their best. I think this was really helpful in the sense that they now understand a kind of framework or a thought process that they need to, think of before actually implementing certain solutions. Now, they wouldn't go ahead and implement a VPN solution straight ahead. They would think of endpoint security first, then the remote access part, server management hardening, and continuous monitoring is something which I feel you would need additional people for it, right? Because it is not a one person's job to do it, and also make sure you can analyze those logs to come up with something that can help you, right? So that is something that is definitely there. And I think, Amit, we have answered your question. Manoj has answered your question.
I want to also talk about one thing which is not really a security or security related things, but that is like vitamin D for our body, right? That if that is not there, probably rest all vitamins may not work as appropriately or as required, which is the asset inventory or the
Right.
asset management part of it, right? For example, same thing. Say, for example, if I have 20 S3 buckets or EC2 instances on my AWS, on my any cloud provider, even if I'm seeing that there seems to be a malicious traffic coming in, to whom the team will go and ask that, hey, you know what, on this EC2 or on this server, I am seeing IP from this particular region, place, or country or protocol. Is this legitimate? And a lot of time goes in identifying or finding out the person who will say, block it, allow it, or I know this is legitimate, right? So asset inventory plays like a vitamin D in this COVID era. That is the basic, that is the fundamental. If that is not there, rest all your control. Like, for example, if I say your endpoint needs to be controlled or secured, how will you ensure that all your 100% endpoints has antivirus or EDR installed? Unless you know that, okay, I have 50 or 500 devices. And trust me, my friend, this is from experience at various clients being in my consulting days. Asset inventory, the moment we talk, they say, yes, we have. The moment you go into detail and start looking into specifics, you will see that the asset owner is missing. I mean, missing when I say, there is a name, but the individual has left the company, say 5 months back,
Yeah.
The purpose of the asset is missing. That what the purpose of that asset is, this is a production, non-production, testing, QA, staging, all sort of things. And because of that, say there was a vulnerability identified, someone needs to patch it. Who will patch it? Who will take the call? No one, because the information vanished. So asset inventory is the key. I forgot to add that, but yeah, that does not always fall under IT purview. InfoSec purview, but that's the fundamental. That's the vitamin D for cybersecurity.
Right, Manoj. I think I agree with you there because while I was also reviewing this company's infrastructure, what we notice is that they have multiple different tools, and each tool gives a different count of the number of assets it covers. Despite covering the same type of asset, it gives a different number, and the asset inventory has a whole different number altogether, right? So this definitely helps on understanding where you are going wrong, and one source of truth is something that you should definitely refer while you implement these security solutions as well. I think this is probably the last mentee that we have for today's webinar, Manoj, as well, right? So if non-compliance can lead to imprisonment in certain cases, right? So this is something that is really something such as a new concept, right? For example, if you are an employee of a company and if you are someone who's responsible for, say, a certain data leak or a data breach, and it can be tagged to you directly, would you be responsible? Would you be held responsible in this case, or the company would be held responsible? Who would go to prison if that case arises, right? So this is a question out to all the attendees here. Right. So I'll just take this up quickly. The next slide, right? It talks about the penalty structure that CERT-In has. And of course, imprisonment is something that is in scope, right? It definitely, we need more guidelines from CERT-In on that and how CERT-In would actually consider this imprisonment. But then again, if you look at any government around the world, the path that they prefer usually is a fine, right? Because they do not want to set this kind of precedence that people can go to jail for something such as a data breach, right? They would rather take a fine from an organization so that people are, more cognizant about it from an organizational standpoint, instead of from an individual standpoint where you have to be worried about taking that responsibility or taking that role. So that is definitely there. And that is, of course, something that you need to consider as well. So imprisonment is definitely in scope, but CERT-In will definitely roll out newer guidelines, which will help you understand on what it is doing to take care of the different penalties associated with data breaches. Right. So I think this brings us to the end of our webinar as well for today. Manoj, I would especially like to thank you for your time and for your valuable insights. I think the knowledge that you shared here today is something that all of us can take back with us and try and also, push into our organizations. Even from a security awareness standpoint, I think some of the points that you put out were really well, something probably I should have a notebook and noted it down as well. But then again, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Manoj, specifically. And thank you all the attendees. I think it was a very interactive session. Thank you for asking your questions.
Sure. Thank you so much, Krishna, Akash, and the entire Tsaaro team for this opportunity. It was indeed a very interactive session, and glad to meet all of you. And as I said, we all are committed to make India as a very cyber safe country, and then each of our organization as a very cyber secure organization. So yeah, glad to know all of you, meet all of you, and looking forward for continued interaction from your side. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Manoj. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Have a good week. Bye-bye.